back on with Warren's then. So we've got it on the lift now. We need it on the lift because we need to do things like connecting up the exhaust, finishing the splitter that we couldn't do with it on the floor, or we were struggling to do with it on the floor. But we've got some lift space, so we've got it on. The thing I'm going to do first, because it's probably highest on the list of critical jobs in terms of, I'm trying to work through the list of to-dos in terms of what's absolutely critical to get the car running. If the car was to go racing tomorrow, what would it absolutely need? And top of that list is the airflow meter. So we're now going to put the air filter in a more or less headlight location, I think. I don't know exactly yet because we need to, the car doesn't need headlights anymore. It's not going to go on the road. We only really need like one headlight. And we don't really even need that. We're only going to have one headlight because we can still have it on the other side. We can wire up the kind of headlights to the side light. So we're going to get rid of this main beam bulb, chop all the back of the headlamp out and put some kind of air filter in here. That was what I wanted to do originally, but Warren wanted to kind of maybe try and keep the car road legal if possible. But I think we've both now come to the realisation this car's never going to go on the road again. And you don't really need it to. There's no benefit to having it as a road car. So yeah, we're going to chop out the back of the headlamp. First thing I need to do is, I can't get it out because the bumper's on. So I need to take the splitter and bumper off, or just bumper off because the splitter's attached to the bumper. Take the bumper off and then I can get the headlamp out and just start hacking away at the back of it. So I've thought about it for a bit and I've gone back on that idea. The trick with doing it, with putting a hole in the headlight and putting the filter in behind that, I think it's going to be getting enough air to the air filter and then rerouting it back into the turbo. I think it could have worked, but I wasn't 100% sure it was going to. And when you're starting to cut up headlights and stuff like that, you've got to be pretty sure with what you're doing, or you end up needing another headlight and then another headlight because you kind of keep changing your mind. It's not like with sheet aluminium where you can just kind of make another one. When you're chopping up headlights, you don't really want to kind of do it twice. So I'm back to one of my original ideas, which I think will work out better in reality. The bumper sits here, flat across here like that. And then the air intake for the turbo is more or less directly between the intercooler end tank and the headlight. So I think what I'm going to do, given that I'm going to need some kind of closing panel, when the bonnet is down, the bonnet sits here and then the bumper's here. I was going to make some kind of closing panel to go between the headlight and the intercooler anyway, obviously because we've got no grille now. So to make it all look nice, I was just going to make a panel which kind of bolted on. And that was the original idea. The air intake for the air filter was going to be in that panel. And one of the best things about these Pro-Ram filters is they actually will take air in straight on. So it'll pull air in from around the outside as well, and we'll make sure it can do that, but it'll be more or less straight on. And there'll be like a hole in the panel to direct air towards the air filter. It's not the best in terms of like aero, like drag, but there's always going to be compromise. At some point you are going to need to pull air into the engine bay, and that's actually the air that pushes you down the road because it's the air that feeds the turbo, so it's fairly crucial. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut on the bandsaw just straight up here. I'm going to try and do as neat a job of it as I can. But again, I'll make some kind of panel to go in the end of the headlight because obviously we want to keep the headlight sealed. But it does also mean that we can keep the headlamp. Jake, who works here, just did mention that I'm about to chop up a set of AFL headlights. But I promise you, these are not nice AFL headlights. These aren't AFL headlights you'd like to exchange money for. They've been split apart before. They're all covered in sealer underneath. It's got a set of HIDs that have been bodged into them. So, yeah, don't worry, I'm not chopping up a good set of headlights. Headlights cut. And you join us a little bit further on. So I've had a bit of a play, and it looks like it's going to work how I thought. We've managed to get a smaller air filter. So this is a 150mm Ram Air Pro Ram. This is a 120, sorry. The ones we normally use are a 150, but I don't think we really need, again, it's like one of them things, the surface area of the filtration just means you probably need to change the filter more often. I'm not sure of the exact science behind it, but the smaller the air filter, obviously the less air it can draw in, but you also have to remember the size of the inlet of the turbo. There's way more surface area here than there is, in a 76mm circle. So the air filter's still plenty big enough before people start banging on about you need a massive air filter to make loads of power, because you don't. That will sit in there like that. And it will go a bit further back. Again, we're still kind of early stages. I've trimmed the headlight quite a bit, and I think I might end up having to just trim a bit out of the intercooler, just kind of just to allow a little bit of room for the air filter to sit a bit further over. It probably would squeeze past, but I think if I modified the intercooler, which I'd rather not do, but not the end of the world if I have to, it should sit something like that. And then what we'll have is a closing panel, which goes kind of around there like that. So it'll sit flat up against the intercooler and flat up against the headlight, and that should look all right, I think. Obviously, the air filter will still draw in air from around the engine bay area, and there will still be air in there. We'll have to get air in and out of the engine bay in order to keep the engine cool. The radiator will do that, but if you have the engine bay totally sealed with no way to get air in or out, which we will do through the floor, you just end up with built-in air in the engine bay. So, but yeah, built-in air temperatures in the engine bay. So we don't really want to do that. There'll still be plenty of air to draw from the engine bay, but we're also going to have about as good as it could get in terms of external cold air to the air filter. These Pro Rams, obviously, you can kind of direct air in the end, and it will draw in from around the outside as well. So I think the next thing to do really is going to be to try and establish exactly where that's going to sit. If I do need to trim a bit out the intercooler, which I think I do, and then just trimming off maybe a little bit more of the headlight. But I think trimming the intercooler is going to be the first thing to do. Again, I'd rather not, since it's kind of already done, but I was anticipating this at least a little bit. If we can trim that and put a nice scallop in it, then that filter will just sit perfectly straight into the turbo, and that's kind of what we want really. You've got to get the air in there in the first place, so yeah, I think that'll work out about perfect. So yeah, probably intercooler off and trim that out next. Right, so we've trimmed a bit out the intercooler, taken a nice shaving off the side of it, and what we've got now is the air filter does fit pretty nicely just in there in between the headlamp, the intercooler. We've got a bit of clearance around everything. I would like to have got it a bit higher. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that without sticking the air filter out. That's the only challenge, I think. I'm not sure if it's going to be that much of, I'm not sure if it's going to be that bad to stick the air filter out. All I'm thinking of is in terms of kind of wet weather driving. Not that it's going to do a great deal of that. This is where you have to kind of weigh up the pros and cons, I guess. I don't want water to collect in the air filter, so I don't really want it to stick out as such. But then we could always, in this closing panel, we could always add a kind of, I don't know, a bit of gutter in or something with a nice drain channel. Yeah, you can always do something, because one of the biggest problems we've got with putting the air filter here is if we take the headlight out, you can see the headlight only has two mounts now. Normally there's a mount down here, but because it's got fiberglass bumpers and fiberglass wings on, all that mount has been taken away. So we've got the mount up here and then the mount here for the headlight. If I take this support out, because we've got no slam panel, we've got no mount for the headlight. and I don't want to trim much more out of here without fully rebuilding it. Yeah, I could chop that out, put a piece of stainless bar in it, it'd probably be just as strong. But at this point, I am trying to save ourselves doing a little bit of work as well. So I do want to try, because the headlights are quite heavy, and you know, there's no way you can get away with just having one mount. It would just flop around all over the place. So I do want to try, if I can, to get away with leaving that steel in there. And that means that the air filter is going to sit a bit lower than I'd like, unless I stick it out. So I think at this point, it's probably a case of having a play with a closing panel and just seeing, probably put the bumper back on as well, have a play with the closing panel and just see exactly what height I have it at. The other thing is I can get it to go higher, but obviously it means the air filter's then going to be at an angle, and then obviously not pointing into the turbo, so then we've got to add in some bends, and then that gets tricky because we've not got a lot of room to work with. So I'm just trying to keep this simple. The more simple we keep it, generally the better it'll work, I'd like to think. So I think it might be a case of, yeah, just having the air filter sticking out a touch. We'll see, play around a bit more. So I've had a bit of a play, and I'm pretty sure that's going to work. Again, nothing's ever like 100% how you'd want it, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that basically just there. It'll stick out a little bit, but again, it's not a problem. We've got the closing panel to fabricate, but we need to start somewhere. So we need to probably make some pipe work now, just tack some bits together or tape some bits together, so that we've got something to aim at. Pop the bumper back on, screw the headlight in, and then see how we're going to make this closing panel work, whether we're going to vent it in, whether it's just going to be open on the end. Yeah, we just need to make some pipe work up now, really. Just start somewhere, and we can always kind of tweak it after. Got some bits of bend taped together. I'm using like a thicker wall cast elbow, mainly because they're a super tight radius, which is what we need, and it matches the outside and inside diameter of the intake of the turbo, so that when we attach it, when we like weld it on, we'll get a perfect transition. So that's what I've got, and that does fit on there quite nicely. That's pretty much as high up as we're going to get it without starting to cut into here. As far back as we can go before we start hitting the boost pipes. And it only sticks out about an inch from the headlight. So at this point, what I'm going to do is pretty much just put the bumper back on. Hopefully it clears the bumper. It should do. There's no reason why it shouldn't. I might have to just trim a little bit out the top of the bumper, but it doesn't matter if we don't need that. It's just kind of excess material anyway. If that works, I'll mark the position. We'll take the turbo or the compressor cover off and weld it all up, basically. And then once we've got it welded up, it's just a case of reassembling it all and making that closing panel. Bumper's back on, roughly. Again, it's a bit of a nightmare to get this bumper on and off, but I've gotten pretty good at getting it close enough to test things with. So as I suspected, that will fit on there perfectly if I just cut the corner off of this bumper. So there's like a corner of bumper, which obviously is normally hidden by where the normal grille goes and where the headlight goes. And I'm just going to basically cut the corner off there because we don't need it. And that bit's basically hitting on the air filter. If I put that in there, you can see, if I kind of line that up, the corner of the bumper there is just hitting on the air filter. So if I cut across there at 45, that'll leave the air filter just sat there nicely. And then by the time we get our kind of panel on around the outside, whether I end up doing it like that or like that, I'm not 100% sure yet. I think it'll be more like that. And then we'll probably have a bit of a panel there. And then obviously as the bonnet comes down, let me move my phone. As the bonnet comes down, there'll be a piece here, and then there'll be obviously a piece over the top. So the air filter will just stick out a little bit. So hopefully that'll work. Trim a bit off the bumper, and yeah, get some welding done. So the only other thing we've got to consider is the airflow meter. Obviously we're keeping this car on stock ECU, so we've got to run the stock Bosch airflow meter. The stock plastic item's obviously a bit bulky, and our intake pipe is 4 inches long. We haven't got room for that. So we're gonna have to put a boss on, and the locations of where we can actually put this are pretty limited. We're pretty much restricted to one place. So with the intake pipe in there, the headlight in and everything, the only place we can put that sensor is in the side there. So I'm going to just tape it on quickly where I think it's going to go. Just get orientation correct. Short side to the airflow, there we go. That's going to go somewhere there, I think. I'm just going to take that on, just so I can put it in place with the headlight in. Just so I can make sure that the headlight isn't going to cause any problems, because the back of the headlight sticks out quite a lot, that's all. So that goes in there. That's going to go on there. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we're going to have not loads of room, but you know, we've got clearance, so yeah. Strip the compressor cover off now and get this all welded up. Got this all welded up now with the hole in it, ready to weld my MAF boss on. But before I do that, I'm just trying to get it nicely lined up with the turbo. As I look inside there's a bit of a lip. Basically the idea of this is maybe like a millimetre bigger than the inside of the turbo. So what I'm doing is I'm just, with the deburring tool, just putting a bit of a chamfer on the edge, just so that, again, you know, efficiency wise, air's coming into the turbo, it's not hitting that little lip. Turbulence and all that. Just trying to make sure it's in a bit of a smoother transition. So yeah, I'm just kind of deburring the edge of the compressor cover. Seen a fair bit of modification, this compressor cover. So essentially all I'm doing is kind of putting a chamfer on it. This edge here where I haven't done it yet is like a nice 90 degree. And then this edge where I have is, yeah, cut off at like a 45. This edge in the top here is going to be quite difficult to do given the outlet mods. Where there's a will, there's a way. So all this will get blown out and washed out before we use it anyway. So we don't need to worry about, need to worry too much about filling it up with swarf. But yeah, that looks loads better in there now. There's no like right angles for the kind kind of air to hit onto now. So I think what I'll do, I'll weld my boss on and then I'll weld that on there. That way around. So we've got the compressor cover fitted back on now with the intercooler. Got plenty of space. Obviously I still need to weld in that that end that I chopped out. And then the headlight is obviously quite tight on here as well. So that'll probably do us for today. Next thing we need to do, like I say, is weld up the end of the intercooler, figure out a closing panel and seal up that headlight again. So yeah, we'll probably do all that next time. So thanks for watching.